You believe you are thinking your own thoughts, feeling your own feelings, and living your own life. This is the assumption that binds you to limitation. I am here to tell you that you are not the thinker. You are the awareness behind thought. You are not living in a world of effects. You are abiding at the center of a spiritual cause. What you perceive as your life, with its struggles and triumphs, is but a shadow cast by the level of consciousness from which you are presently operating. There are not merely higher thoughts, but entirely higher, as planes of being, 7 distinct realms of awareness, each governing the very substance of your experience. To know them is to cease being a victim of circumstance and to become the silent architect of your reality. Today we shall ascend this inner ladder. We shall move from the realm of reaction into the realm of dominion, from the voice of the personal I, into the silence of the impersonal one. This is not philosophy to be pondered, but a living truth to be witnessed within your own being. Your life cannot remain the same when you see where you have been standing and what heights are awaiting your recognition. If this recognition stirs something within you, then let that stirring become a sacred act. Commit to this inner journey by subscribing to this channel, adding your light to this congregation of seekers. And if you are ready to leave behind the level of lack and fear, mark your transition by commenting the number 7, a symbol of your willingness to climb. You walk through your day convinced that the stream of commentary in your mind, the planning, the worrying, the judging, the remembering, is the very core of who you are. You believe you are the author of these thoughts, the initiator of these actions, and therefore solely responsible for navigating the world they describe. This cherished belief in the personal self as the thinker and the doer is the fundamental assumption and impresence you in a cycle of limitation and wariness. It is the primary veil that must be lifted. For if you examine this closely, not as a theory, but in the quiet honesty of your own experience, you will find something astonishing. You are not the voice. You are the one who hears it. You are not the thought. You are the space in which the thought appears and dissolves. Consider a moment of sudden anger. The world presents a stimulus, a critical remark, a traffic delay, and instantly a storm of thoughts and heated feelings erupts within you. The personal self claims this storm entirely. I am angry, it declares. It feels justified, it spins narratives of blame, and it prepares retaliatory words or actions. This I seems so solid, so real in that moment. But if you can pause, even for a second, and look backward from the emotion, you will notice a tiny, almost imperceptible gap. Before, I am angry, there was simply the hearing of the words or the seeing of the red light. In that pristine moment of pure experience, there was no anger. The anger arose as a reaction, a conditioned thought, wave in the mind, and then the personal I rushed in to claim ownership of it. It attached itself to the reaction and called it my anger. This is the mechanism of the illusion. You are not the reactive wave. You are the ocean that allowed it to rise and will allow it to fall. This mistaken identity shapes your entire reality. You believe you must think your way to solutions, that the burden of figuring everything out rests on the shoulders of this personal I. You lie awake at night as this thinker churns over problems, replaying past conversations and rehearsing future ones, believing this mental effort is necessary and productive. Yet it is this very activity that clouds the deeper intelligence within you. It is like a gardener who only ever looks at the tangled weeds on the surface, tirelessly pulling at them, never trusting that beneath the soil lies a silent, perfect intelligence that knows exactly how to grow the plant. Your personal thinking is the weeding, your true consciousness is the fertile, intelligent ground. See how this plays out in daily striving. You set a goal for yourself, perhaps for prosperity, for a better relationship, for health. The personal self takes this goal as its own project. It schemes, it labors, it strains, it measures progress, and it collapses in anxiety at every setback. This I operates from a sense of lack, from the belief that it is not whole and must acquire something from the world to become complete. Its actions are therefore rooted in tension, and it often finds that even upon achieving the goal, a hollow weariness remains because the underlying sense of lack, of being a separate I, striving in a hostile universe, was never addressed. The joy of achievement is fleeting because the achiever is an illusion. The freedom we speak of begins when you challenge this central authority. It starts when you notice these thoughts are happening, but I am not the one thinking them in the way I believed. They are arising from a conditioned past, from memory, from habit. This noticing is the first crack in the prison wall. You begin to withdraw your identity from the chatter. You start to see the personal self not as your master, but as a familiar character in a play, a character you have been instructed to believe is the real you. As you practice this gentle identification, a profound quietness emerges. In the gaps between thoughts, in the moments where you cease to claim ownership, you taste your true nature as awareness itself. This awareness does not think, it knows. It does not strive, it is. It is from this silent, causeless ground of being that all genuine power, creativity, and peace originate. Your daily life becomes the laboratory for this revelation. When anxiety about tomorrow arises, instead of following the frantic thoughts of the personal I, you might simply acknowledge, here is the familiar pattern of anxiety. You do not fight it, for that would simply be the personal self engaging in another struggle. You witness it, and in that witnessing, a separation occurs. The anxiety may still play out on the surface, but it is no longer central to your identity. You have located yourself as the calm, unmoved witness behind it. The same process applies to desires, to regrets, to all the mental furniture the personal self calls its own. Each time you recognize, this is not me, this is a movement and me, you loosen its bonds. You are no longer the puppet of conditioned thought. You are beginning to abide as the silent puppeteer, the conscious presence that grants the puppet the illusion of life. This is not a passive state. It is the most dynamic position possible, for it connects you to the infinite creative potential that flows when the limited, noisy I steps aside. When you begin to withdraw from the tyranny of the personal thinker, a revolutionary and often unsettling truth dawns. The world you have been living in is not a solid, external fact to which you must react, but a fluid projection, a living mirror reflecting back to you the very state of your own awareness. This is the profound transition from seeing yourself as an effect of worldly conditions to knowing yourself as the sole cause. Your consciousness is not a passive recipient shaped by events. It is the active, shaping force. Every condition, every circumstance, every relationship you encounter is neutral clay awaiting the impress of your inner state. To believe otherwise, to believe the world happens to you, is to remain a prisoner in a cell of your own construction, begging the walls for freedom. Observe the common experience of two people encountering the same objective event. One walks into a crowded room and perceives a warm buzz of potential connection, feeling welcomed and at ease. Another walks into the very same room with the very same people and perceives a threatening gauntlet of judgment, feeling isolated and anxious. The room did not change. The difference is entirely internal, a projection of consciousness. The first individual, from a state of inner openness and wholeness, projects that quality onto the neutral canvas of the room and thus experiences it. The second, from a state of inner fear and separation, projects that, and his world conforms to the projection. This is not positive thinking. It is a fundamental law. Your consciousness is the lens through which all light passes, and it colors everything you see. A dirty lens will render the sun itself gray and lifeless, and you will curse the sun, never thinking to clean the lens. This principle moves far beyond perception into the very substance of events. Consider the experience of lack, whether financial, emotional, or creative. The personal self, believing itself to be an effect, sees the empty bank account, the unresponsive partner, the blank page. It then frantically attempts to manipulate these external conditions. It seeks more money, pleads for attention, forces inspiration. This action, born from the consciousness of lack, only perpetuates the condition. It is like shaking an empty tree, believing the shaking will create fruit. True cause operates in the opposite direction. It begins with a radical shift in consciousness, away from the condition. It asks you to turn your gaze completely inward to still the panic of the personal I, and to abide, even for a moment, in the silent knowing of your inherent completeness. From that settled awareness, a consciousness of wholeness, not of need, action may flow, but it will be a different kind of action. It will be guided, purposeful, and empowered, not frantic and forceful. The world, being a mirror, must then reorganize itself to reflect this new inner state of wholeness. The opportunity, the resource, the idea will appear not because you wrestled it from the world, but because your consciousness called it forth into form. Your physical well-being is another powerful arena for this law. The body is the most intimate and immediate part of your perceived world. The common view holds that germs, genetics, or accidents happen to the body, and you, as an effect, must suffer or fight them. But what if the body is the primary mirror, the first and most sensitive reflector of consciousness? A consciousness burdened by constant resentment, unprocessed grief, or seething anxiety is a toxic atmosphere. The body, in its infinite intelligence, will eventually express that toxicity in form as tension, inflammation, or disease. Medicine that treats only the physical expression without addressing the conscious cause is like repainting a wall while the house's foundation continues to crack. True healing begins when you cease identifying as the sick person, the victim of the condition, and instead retreat to the causeless center of your being. In that quietness, you are not a body that has awareness. You are awareness that currently inhabits a body. From that standpoint of wholeness and peace, you provide a new template, a new consciousness for the body to reflect. The healing intelligence inherent in life itself is then free to operate without the interference of a fearful, resistant mind. This understanding transforms every challenge from a crisis to be endured into an invitation for inner adjustment. The difficult colleague, the financial setback, the personal loss, these are not random punishments, but precise indicators. They are showing you, with unerring accuracy, where your consciousness is still anchored in fear, in separation, in the belief in good and evil outside yourself. To rail against them is to shout at your own reflection in the mirror. The only creative response is to turn within and address the source of the image. As you learn to dwell more consistently in the consciousness of peace, of omnipresent good, of impersonal love, the world has no choice. It must soften its edges, open its doors, and present a face of harmony. You are not trying to change the world. You are allowing the changeless truth within you, your spiritual cause, to be the only governor of your experience, and the world, being its effect, willingly and naturally conforms. Having established that you are not the effect of a world, but the cause through your state of consciousness, we now come to the very architecture of this inner reality, the distinct and ascending realms of awareness from which all experience emanates. These are not metaphors or abstract concepts. They are as real and as influential as the laws of physics, governing the very texture of your life from the shadows. To climb these inner levels is to be reborn into entirely new worlds while standing in the same physical space. For you are not changing your location. You are shifting your point of origin. Imagine your awareness as a radio receiver. Most people spend their lives tuned to one or two familiar stations, believing the static, the chatter, and the limited programming they receive is all that exists. They are convinced the world as is that noise. But what if you could turn the dial? Each click reveals a new frequency, a new level of consciousness, with its own quality of sound, its own content, its own reality. The first level, which many unknowingly inhabit, is a station broadcasting pure survival, fear, and lack. From here, everything is a threat, resources are scarce, people are adversaries, and the body is a fragile object in a dangerous universe. A person anchored here will see conspiracy in coincidence, insult in neutral comment, and will attract situations that validate this bleak broadcast, for the world must mirror the signal, but turn the dial slightly. You move into the level of conflict and desire where the personal self is in full command, engaged in a ceaseless campaign of getting, achieving, and defending. Life here is a drama of winners and losers, a battlefield of willpower. Your career, your relationships, your possessions are the trophies and the ruins of this war. While more dynamic than the station of pure lack, it is exhausting, for it is built on the unstable foundation of a personal I that must constantly prove its worth. Success here is fleeting, for every victory needs a new enemy, every acquisition soon feels ordinary, and the underlying fear of loss is the constant background static. As you learn to observe this personal drama without being consumed by it, you make a monumental shift into the level of reason and harmony. Here, the mind seeks understanding, balance, and universal principles. You begin to see patterns, to forgive more easily, to operate from a sense of fairness and growing inner peace. This is the realm of the mature philosopher, the compassionate counselor, the ethical leader. It feels like a profound elevation, and it is. Yet, even here, there is a subtle trap, the belief that you, through your refined understanding and personal goodness, are navigating life. It is still a station of the personal self, albeit a wiser, kinder one. The I is now a good manager, but it is still the manager, believing it is in control. The transformation occurs when you tire of being the manager, however wise, and surrender the need to control the broadcast altogether. You turn the dial past the stations of the personal I and into the realm of pure impersonal awareness. This is not a station of content, but of silent, potent space. It is the dead air between channels, which is not dead at all, but alive with infinite potential. Here, you are not a good person or a bad person. You are not a thinker at all. You are the witness, the still center, the awareness in which all the lower stations play their programs. From this vantage point, a miraculous thing happens. You realize you are not listening to the radio. You are the radio. You are the very capacity for all these frequencies. This is the dawning of your true spiritual identity, not as a character in the drama, but as the silent screen upon which all drama appears. From this foundation of silent awareness, you begin to broadcast from a completely different source. The next levels are stations of pure creativity, intuitive knowing, and unconditional love, but they are not stations you tune into. They are frequencies that begin to emit from you naturally and without effort, because you are abiding at the source. A solution to a lifelong problem dawns not from thinking, but as a sudden, whole knowing. A compassion for a former enemy arises not from effort, but as a spontaneous recognition of shared being. These are the fruits of living from your spiritual identity. Your daily life becomes the proof. A traffic jam, experienced from the level of lack and frustration, is a personal affront. From the level of reason, it is an inconvenience to be accepted calmly. But from the level of impersonal awareness, it may become a period of rich silence, a moment of unexpected beauty in the sky, or the birthplace of a creative idea that would never have been heard over the noise of your previous striving. The event did not change. The frequency of your consciousness did, and thus your entire reality transformed. To know these levels is to hold the map to your own liberation. For you can, in any moment, choose to turn the dial inward, to retreat from the content of the broadcast and reclaim your identity as the silent, causeless broadcaster. As you come to know yourself as the silent broadcaster, not the noisy program, a profound and practical shift becomes not only possible, but inevitable. This is the movement from a life of reaction and perceived victimhood to one of silent dominion. Dominion is not control. It is the opposite of control. Control is what the personal I attempts from the lower levels, frantically manipulating externals to achieve a feeling of safety. Dominion is the natural state of the one who abides in the higher awareness, who understands cause and is therefore unmoved by effects. It is the stillness at the eye of the hurricane, from which all power flows without a single act of force. Consider the common experience of feeling overwhelmed, of being at the mercy of a demanding job, a chaotic family schedule, or a flood of bad news. The personal self, believing itself to be in effect, reacts with a cascade of anxiety, resentment, and frantic activity. It feels like a leaf in a storm, battered by forces beyond its command. This is the consciousness of victimhood. It is not the circumstances that create this feeling. It is the level of awareness from which you are interpreting them. The transition begins not by changing the schedule or quitting the job, but by a deliberate inward retreat. In a moment of perceived pressure, you stop. You cease feeding the narrative of, "This is too much for me." You withdraw your identity from the overwhelmed thinker and return to the silent awareness behind it. You stand in that instant as the impersonal witness to the chaos, not as its participant. This is not avoidance. It is strategic spiritual positioning. From that center of stillness, a clarity emerges. The next action may be the same. You may still need to make the call, prepare the meal, address the problem, but the quality of the action is utterly transformed. It is no longer a reactive twitch born of fear, but a purposeful movement flowing from peace. This is dominion in action. The outer world may churn, but your inner world, your point of origin, is commanding in its stillness. This principle reveals itself powerfully in relationships, the arena where the personal self most fiercely feels its victories and wounds. An unkind word from a partner, a neglectful action from a friend, triggers an immediate reaction. The personal I feels the sting, constructs a case, and prepares its defense or retaliation. It feels victimized by the other's behavior. But dominion asks a radical question. From what level of consciousness am I receiving this event? If you are receiving it from the level of the separate, personal self, you will indeed feel attacked. For that level's very existence is built on separation and defense. The invitation is to step back in that very moment of heat into the awareness of your true nature. From that vantage point, you see the other not as a separate enemy, but as another consciousness, likely broadcasting from their own level of pain, fear, or lack. Their action was a manifestation of their inner state, not a definitive statement on your worth. This realization doesn't condone cruelty, but it dissolves the personal venom from it. Your response, then, is not a reaction from your own wound, but an action from your wholeness. It may be firm, it may set a boundary, but it will be free of the destructive emotional charge that perpetuates conflict. You have ceased to be a victim of their behavior by refusing to meet it on its own level. Financial pressure provides another stark canvas. The consciousness of victimhood sees a bill, a debt, a market downturn as an aggressive force against which it is powerless. It reacts with fear, with scarcity, with a tightening grip. This very consciousness of lack attracts more of its likeness. Dominion approaches the same numbers on a page from an entirely different plane. It recognizes that money is a symbol of energy, and energy flows to and from consciousness. From the silent center of awareness, you acknowledge the condition without allowing it to define your reality. You place your faith not in the external figures, but in the infinite creative potential of the source within you. This shift is not about magically willing money into your hand. It is about changing the inner climate from one of desperate need to one of quiet trust and openness. From this peaceful dominion, intelligent ideas arise, unexpected opportunities are recognized, and guided actions are taken, all of which were invisible to the panic, reactive mind. The situation may resolve in a conventional way or in a miraculous one, but the resolution will feel like a natural unfoldment, not a battle won. This silent dominion is your birthright, but it requires vigilance. The pull of the old, reactive levels is strong, a familiar gravity. Your practice is to catch yourself in the very moment of reaction, the clenching stomach, the sharp thought, the surge of emotion, and use that sensation as a bell, calling you back to the silent observer. With each return, you strengthen your residence in this higher state. The storms of life do not cease, but you are no longer in the storm. You are the depth of the ocean beneath which no storm can reach. Your power is no longer expressed in forceful action, but in impregnable stillness. From that stillness, a life of effortless right action and unshakable peace organically unfolds. For you are no longer fighting the world in the mirror. You have become the clear and flawless glass. This silent dominion you are learning to inhabit is not a remote, impersonal state of detachment. It is, in fact, the most intimate and true point of your own being, the discovery of the impersonal I, as the sole seat of authentic awareness. This is the pivotal revelation that marks the difference between spiritual philosophy and spiritual experience. You have spent a lifetime personalizing awareness, claiming it as me, awareness attached to me body, mind, my story. But what if you are not the owner of awareness, but awareness itself? The impersonal I is that very awareness prior to any story, prior to any name, prior to any history. It is the cognizing presence that was there when you were a child that is here now as you read these words, and that will remain when all your current thoughts and concerns have faded. It is the one constant in a lifetime of variables. To grasp this not as an idea but as a living fact, examine the simple act of perception. You look at a tree, the personal I immediately comments, "That's a beautiful oak tree. It reminds me of the tree in my childhood yard. I wish I had such a tree." This is a layer of thought, memory, and personal association draped over the pure perception. Now, strip that away. Before the commentary, there was simply the seeing. There was a luminous, wordless awareness of shape, color, and presence. That raw, uninterpreted seeing, that is the impersonal I in operation. It is utterly impersonal. It does not care if the tree is in your yard or a stranger's. It does not compare it to a memory. It simply beholds. This impersonal awareness is the foundation of every experience you have ever had. The personal self is the later addition, the garnish on the meal. Mistakenly believing it is the chef. This distinction becomes your greatest tool for freedom in daily life. Consider a moment of sharp criticism received at work. The personal I is eviscerated. It feels attacked, diminished, and angry. It spins tales of injustice and plans its defense. Now apply the knife of this truth. Ask yourself what is aware of this entire drama. The feeling of hurt is felt. The angry thoughts are seen. The planning is observed. There must be an awareness that is cognizing all of these internal phenomena. That awareness, the impersonal I, is itself untouched by the hurt, the anger, or the plans. It is the silent screen upon which the movie of insult is playing. The movie may be dark and tumultuous, but the screen remains pristine, unchanged. Your liberation lies in shifting your identity from the chaotic movie to the silent, unchanging screen. You do not say, "I am hurt." You acknowledge there is a sensation of hurt appearing in awareness. This slight reframing is a spiritual revolution. It breaks the chain of reactivity at its root. This impersonal I is not a state of cold indifference. It is the womb of true compassion. The personal self's love is conditional, fragile, and transactional. I love you because you make me feel good, because you are my family, because you meet my needs. When conditions change, that love falters. But the compassion that flows from the impersonal I is of a different order entirely. Abiding as this impersonal awareness, you look upon another and you do not see primarily their personality, their actions, or their relationship to you. You see another manifestation of the same awareness, temporarily caught in the dream of a personal self, perhaps broadcasting from a level of pain or fear. Your response is not personal affection, but a recognition of shared being. From this recognition, actions can arise that are far more wise and truly kind than any sentiment born of personal attachment. You can offer forgiveness where the personal self would demand apology. You can offer peace where the personal self would escalate conflict. This is love without an object, flowing from the subject that is awareness itself. Your deepest intuitions and moments of inspired creativity are also direct visitations from this impersonal ground. The personal mind labors, calculates, and rehashes. It operates on known data, but have you not experienced moments when a solution, a melody, or a perfect sentence simply arrived, whole and complete, as if downloaded from a clearer air? That is the impersonal I communicating. It is the voice of a broader, infinite intelligence that you are, when you are not identified with the narrow, personal thinker. The artist who gets lost in the flow, the scientist who has the breakthrough in a moment of relaxation, the parent who suddenly knows the right thing to say, these are all instances where the personal self has stepped aside, however briefly, and allowed the impersonal awareness to be the primary channel. To live from this, I, is the ultimate homecoming. It means you are never truly alone, for you are one with the source of all being. It means your worth is beyond question, for it is not based on any transient achievement or attribute. It means your peace is unassailable, for it is not dependent on any external condition. The practice is a continual remembering, a gentle but relentless orientation inward. When stress mounts, you ask, who is aware of this stress? When joy comes, you inquire, what is it that knows this joy? You trace every experience back from the personal content to the impersonal context. Gradually, you cease to live from the surface of the lake, tossed by every wind, and you sink into the still, silent depths that are your true nature.